Hello, welcome back to the channel. Have Roots Will Travel. And my name is Lisa Elvin Stoltari. I am a genealogist and a passionate traveler. And over the last several years, I have been traveling, but traveling through time. Getting to know these extraordinary women, les filles du roi and les filles mariées. Really and truly, they are the founding mothers and grandmothers of New France and also really of North America when you see how deep the lines go. So I wanted to explore their lives. They're often forgotten names, and they are truly, truly the, I guess, the wind beneath our wings, because without them, we wouldn't be here. It's very, very clear. And there's so many people that can trace their roots to these amazing women. All in all, they have, I believe, there's about 700 filles du roi that left descendants and another 200 femmes mariées. Just extraordinary. Almost 1,000 women came and created the North America and the Quebec and the Canada that we know today. So with that being said, I wanted to explore their contributions. Before we begin today, we're going to be looking at Les Filles du Roi, a very special one. And but before we begin, let me show you ways you can support the channel. The first three keep you in the know, which is subscribe, like, and notify. And then the next three are ways to help the channel grow. So we have memberships. They start at 99 cents and they a month, and then they go all the way to $24.99. And then we also have a super thanks that you can give for this particular video or any video actually. And it's sort of like a tip. And so it lets you put in the amount that you want. And then you also have a PayPal button that can also be part of that contribution as well. It's on my website, haverootswilltravel.com. So with that being said, let's get started and get to know our filles du roi of this episode. Today we're going to be looking at episode 327, and it's a fille du roi, Marguerite Jourdain. And she comes to us from a viewer request, and I was very thrilled to be able to explore this for him. So this is his great-grandmother, but perhaps it's also some of you. So please, in the comments below, let us know if you are also descendant from Marguerite Jourdain. Let's get to know her a little bit better. So Marguerite was born in 1648 in a commune then called Notre-Dame du Bosc Robert, that is now called Le Bois Robert, and it is found in the Normandy region of France, and inside of that, the département of Seine-Maritime. Now, the church that she would have been baptized in dates back to the 11th century, Église Notre-Dame, and it makes it almost 400 years old by the time Marguerite comes along to be baptized there. Really, really astonishing. Now, I chose this picture just to indicate how remote it is and how rural it is. There's a population of about 385 that live there now. But if this is your ancestor, imagine walking along those streets, particularly going inside that church. I can't imagine a more dramatic moment. So Marguerite would, after her mother's death, there is no mention of her father passing away, but she would become a fille du roi and come aboard on September 25th, 1667, aboard Le Saint-Louis de Dieppe, meaning that she would have taken the ship that was leaving from Dieppe, which is normal given that she was part of the Normandy region, so it was just kind of up the road for her. But there's no mention of a dowry, any kind of money. We don't have that information. Now, the groom that she would select and who would select her is named Bernard Delpage de Belair. He was born about 1641 in a very small commune called Tonac in France. His parents were Jean Delpage and Jeanne Tessera. Now, you'll notice a little question mark. That's because I got conflicting surnames. So I wanted to indicate that for those of you who are researching. He comes to us from the region of France known that we don't often go. It's really the south of France, and Occidental is that particular region. And inside of that region, it is a the département, or county as we've come to know, Tarn. And this village dates back to the 1100s. It was originally founded as a Gallo-Roman um, commune, if you will, and it originally had a name that was very Latin, and it was named after a man named Totinus or Totinius, and that's where Tarn comes from. And when Bernard would have been, a small boy, it would have been a very small farming community, and there's a parish church that you can see in one of the pictures there on the left. The parish church of Saint Pierre, and the ruins of an old medieval castle are nearby, and some records also mention Saint Anthony, which likely refers to the nearby church of Saint Antoine in Les Cabanes, just down the road. This connection helps explain why your ancestors' origin might be listed with both Tonac and Saint Anthony in various records. So for you genealogists doing this research, parish registers from Tonac and Les Cabanes, along with notarial contracts from a place called Corde-sur-Ciel. Isn't that beautiful? It means corde, which means cord of the sky, like sky cord almost, are the key sources for tracing families in this area. The people here would have traveled overland to larger towns and eventually to major ports like Bordeaux or La Rochelle before departing for New France. So let's see when he comes to New France. Well, he obviously came aboard with Les Garnier soldiers. He would arrive here on the 17th of August, 1665, as a soldier with the Compagnie de Salière. And he sails aboard the Aigle d'Or de Brouage, and he left, which means the golden needle, and he left La Rochelle on May 13th, 1665, and arrived in Quebec on the night of August 18th to the 19th. And there's an interesting note here. On August 8th, the ship's lieutenant had already disembarked at Moulin-Baude near Tadoussac, seeking additional pilots, these are ship navigators, from the Sœurs de Tracy. Once Bernard's company reached Quebec, they were quickly deployed southward to the Richelieu area to campaign against the Agniers, the Mohawk nation. After this military action, Bernard's unit was stationed in Montreal, where we find him confirmed by Monseigneur himself, François de Laval, in May of 1666. And Bernard was very eager to marry. And he did sign a contract with a fille du roi, Marguerite Jourdain A, that we actually did a profile on way back when. And I've included the link for those of you who might be curious. So let's see, this was his path to Marguerite. Let's have a look. So they were married in Montreal on November 25th, 1667. Once they were married, they would settle in a town called Repentigny, which is an off-island now suburb of Montreal. It's located north of Montreal on the lower end of the river L'Assomption. And so it was founded in 1670 by Jean-Baptiste Legardeur, who was the son of the Seigneur Pierre Legardeur. And during the town's first 250 years, Repentigny was only inhabited, by very few people. I think in 1677, there were only 30 inhabitants. And it was only in 2002 when the Repentigny merged with the city of Legardeur, the city's area, this was in 2002, can you imagine? It doubled in size and the population grew by 70%. So big deal there. And I've included a link for you all to kind of see how early they are part of the founders. And it really is kind of an interesting thing to see. We don't often get to talk about Repentigny, but they were definitely the pioneers there. They would go on to have 10 children. Marie Barbe would die in infancy. Marie would marry Antoine Bourdelais and would have one child who did survive. Catherine would marry Abraham Jean Migneron and would have 11 children, but alas, only 4 survived. Denise would pass away at 3 years of age. Marie-Madeleine would pass away at 8 years of age. Françoise would marry Louis-François Xavier Beaupré, and she would have 2 children, both of whom survived. Then we have another child who passed away, this unnamed, in in infancy. And then we have Jean-François, who married Marianne Richaume and had 8 children, 4 of whom made it to adulthood. And Marianne's mother was a fille du roi that we have profiled, Madeleine Raclot. I will include the link for you all in case this is your line. Then we have Jean-Baptiste, who married Madeleine Ménard. They had 6 children, 3 of whom made it to adulthood. And Madeleine's mother was also a fille du roi, Marguerite Jourdain A. And then finally we have Marguerite, who married Jean-Baptiste Berloin and would have 7 children. 5 would survive and 4 would leave descendants. In the 1681 census, we find Bernard, Marguerite. Now you can see there's a 10-year gap there. And their children, Marie, Catherine, Madeleine, Jeanne, they have 1 gun, 7 Batacons, that's either 7 horned animals, 2 horses, and they have 11 arpents malades, about 8 acres of land. A very sudden death. Bernard would die December 9th, 1687. He would have been 47 years of age, according to the records. Of course, he was listed as being 43, according to the burial record. But according to our records, he would have been 47. He and Marguerite would have celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary only a few weeks before his death. So another groom would come into the life of our beautiful Marguerite. Louis Majot, the Maisonseul, born about 1645 in a commune called Saint-Martin de Saint-Maxin in France. It's actually now called Saint-Maxin-l'École, and it's found in the Deux-Sèvres department of the region of Nouvelle-Aquitaine. You can see there, just kind of situate yourself. And then his parents were Abraham Majot and Jacquette de Lavaux. And this actually was a major source of immigrants to New France in the 17th century. This particular, not this particular commune, but this particular area. The parish was named after Saint Martin of Tours, a popular Catholic figure, and the church there would have been the center of life. And now there are some records that we can possibly look at to try to see, some records that probably have sustained. You're going to be needing to look at a very specific parish and one that would have grown up around a Benedictine abbey. I've shown you a picture of what looks like an abandoned church. I wasn't able to establish 100% that this church was still functioning, but this was the church that I believe may have been the place where Louis would have been baptized. And there's a sign indicating that at least it's there. It's still there. And I also want to point out his D name, the D names that you get from, as you come across. Maisonseul, the real, translation of it means single dwelling. So it's kind of an interesting kind of a D name. I've seen a lot of D names. This one's kind of up there in terms of unusual. So that's kind of something for you researchers to see what that was called and why it was called that. And so Louis would also arrive as Marguerite's first husband had arrived. As a Carignan-Salieres soldier. His troop, however, was La Fouille, and he arrived in the 12th of September, toward the end of the time that all of the soldiers were coming. So the 12th of September, 1665, Louis is in New France. So their marriage took place on the 8th of January, 1689. That meant that Louis would have been on his own for, the better part of 14 years or so. I don't have any information about what he was doing. It appears that he was a single man, given his, his marriage. It does not indicate that he was married before. So I'm not really sure, but I definitely think that this was a good match. And the proof, as they say, is in the pudding. There was a new family that began, and that was lovely. Denise would marry Jean-François Labelle and would have 3 children, all of whom made it to adulthood. Joseph Pierre would marry Jeanne Paris and would have 7 children, all of whom would make it to adulthood. Another loss for Marguerite. Louis would die 11 years after their marriage in 1700. He was 55 years of age. Marguerite would pass away at age 75, according to the burial record, in 1720. It is interesting to note that they did not know her maiden name, but they did know both her husband's name. When you try to search for her, you'll find only Marguerite in 1720. It was really hard to find, but that is the burial record. She would be buried at Saint-Sulpice. That is where she was living at the time with one of her children. And she would leave a legacy of 84 descendants as of 1729. And another thing that the viewer who requested this video shared with me is that she was ultimately she was buried at Saint-Sulpice as far as we can tell, but there is some evidence to suggest that she was then removed back to Repentigny and with her 2 husbands, so she would have been buried alongside them. I don't have that record, but that is the supposition. So if you go on the site of Repentigny, and they have actually an entire section of their history. So they're really proud of their history. And there you have our beautiful Bernard is listed there as among the first settlers. It's called the Premier Dénombrement de Repentigny. So it's the first numbers of Repentigny. And I've included in the notes a link so you can go and have a look yourself and just check that out. And there's other names. I'm certain that those of you whose line descends from that also probably, maybe, have names that are familiar on this list as well. So have a look at that. For further research, the first one is in French, and it is about the pioneers of Repentigny, and Marguerite is listed. I provided the links. Now, those of you who don't speak French, you know that you can just scan it and auto-translate this with AI and that sort of thing. So the barriers that we've had in the past are kind of falling away. So absolutely, that's available. You can download it. It's an absolutely wonderful series that they have. They have like 5 books, as far as I know. Maybe they've got more. I have to check that out. The other one is in English. It doesn't deal specifically with Marguerite, but it does tell you something about the pioneers and what they went through. And they were in the region of Montreal. So I wanted to include that as well. Fabulous book to give you some insight into what your ancestor might have experienced. Wasn't she amazing? Marguerite is truly a study in survival and persistence, and being just really able to keep on keeping on no matter what happened. And the fact that they were able to pioneer in a place that was fairly remote. Remember, they were among that first 30 that were in the Repentigny. I always admire the people that are the true pioneers, you know. She was a pioneer in New France, but also in that particular part of the world. And she was able to, even after the loss of her beloved husband, able to form another family and also have children with him. So I just think she's just a study in, I don't know, extraordinariness and the ability to sustain tragedy and overcome it. So we are so grateful to Marguerite. We are grateful for her tenacity, for her bravery, for her courage, and most of all, the love that she exhibited in life. To have loved 2 men and created 2 families with them, I think is a remarkable thing. So thank you, Marguerite, for your gifts, for your presence, and we are blessed that you came across an ocean to begin a family here. Thank you, Marguerite. And I want to say thank you to my patrons and supporters as well. You are really, truly amazing to me, because each and every time I sort of go, why am I doing this? I'll get a note. I'll get something that says, go, Lisa, go. So thank you so much. I truly appreciate your support. And with that being said, I will see you on the next episode of Les Filles du Roi. Until then, au revoir.